I still remember the silence after the door closed that night, the kind of silence that hums, heavy and electric, right before the truth comes out. My granddaughter Lila had just called me a background character in her life, her exact words. The same girl I once rocked to sleep through storms, the one who used to slip her little hand into mine whenever she was scared. That night, I realized something terrible. I had raised someone who thought love was a performance, not a feeling. If you've ever watched your own blood treat you like a prop in their movie, you'll understand what that silence feels like drowning in a sea of your own memories. It started 3 weeks before that night. Lila came home from university with more designer bags than clothes and a new way of speaking, polished and pretentious, as if every word had been ironed flat. "Grandma, this weekend is crucial," she told me, pacing our little kitchen like an actress waiting for her cue. "My boyfriend, Tyler, is coming with his parents. They're, well, very established, old money, and I just need everything to look, appropriate." I was stirring soup. "Appropriate for what, sweetheart?" She sighed. "Grandma, your house is cozy. I just want them to feel comfortable. Maybe hide the crocheted blankets and that photo of Grandpa in his postal uniform. Could we, put it away for the weekend?" I stopped stirring. The soup bubbled quietly. "Your grandfather worked 40 years for this family," I said. "I know, Tyler's mother runs a foundation. She's used to a certain aesthetic. As if kindness had gone out of style. But I said nothing. That's what grandmothers do sometimes. We let the young ones learn their own lessons, even when it hurts. The next few days were a whirlwind. Lila ordered floral arrangements online, borrowed furniture from a friend, and even rented a vintage chandelier to hang in my dining room. I helped her carry boxes, biting my tongue when she snapped at me for folding napkins. The wrong way. Then on Thursday, I overheard her phone call. "Yeah, I've got everything set up. They think I live here alone. My grandmother's just traveling." My heart clenched. "Just make sure everyone stays in character," she continued. "Mom, Dad, and my aunt. They need to look natural. We can't afford another disaster like last time." I froze behind the half-open kitchen door. Mom? Dad? Aunt? Lila had no mother, not anymore. My daughter passed away 10 years ago, and Lila's father was a man who hadn't sent a single birthday card since. So who were these people she was calling her family? I waited until she hung up. My hands were trembling as I entered the room. "Lila," I said softly, "who are you talking to?" She spun around, eyes wide. "Grandma! Oh, just some classmates. For a group project." A group project that called her sweetheart? I didn't believe her, but I didn't press. Instead, I began watching more closely. The next morning, she printed fake photographs, family vacation pictures with strangers' faces photoshopped next to hers. In one of them, a woman in pearls stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, smiling like a catalog model. Lila added the frame to our mantel, right next to my old wedding picture, as if the woman were real. That's when I realized my granddaughter was building a fantasy, and she was willing to erase me to make it believable. Saturday arrived like a thunderstorm in disguise. Tyler and his parents were due at 6. Lila had transformed the house. Lace curtains gone, replaced by sleek beige ones. My teapot hidden behind a modern espresso machine she'd borrowed from her roommate. Even the smell of my home was different, masked by the cold scent of luxury candles. At 5:30, a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway, but the people who stepped out weren't strangers to me. The parents were two faces I recognized from the downtown coffee shop, local actors who performed improv on weekends. The aunt was a woman who worked at the thrift store. I almost laughed if it hadn't hurt so much. They came inside, nervous but polite. "Mrs. Hartman," the man said, shaking my hand too firmly, "we're Lila's parents." "I see," I replied. "From which production?" Pardon? Oh, I just assumed you must be rehearsing something. You look like actors. Lila shot me a warning glare so sharp I felt it in my bones. Grandma's teasing, she said through clenched teeth. She has such a quirky sense of humor. Dinner was a performance from the first minute. The parents complimented the wine they'd brought. Boxed Chardonnay poured into crystal glasses Lila had rented. The aunt laughed too loudly at everything I said. And Lila? She was radiant, confident. She called me Joe instead of Grandma, as if I were a distant acquaintance. Tyler and his family arrived shortly after, all polished smiles and expensive watches. They believed every word. Lila introduced her parents with ease, spinning stories about summers in Tuscany and charity galas they'd supposedly hosted. I sat quietly at the end of the table, invisible in my own home, listening to lies stack higher than the wedding cake she'd ordered for dessert. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. Halfway through dinner, the chandelier flickered, then crashed to the floor. The entire room gasped. I jumped to my feet. "Is everyone all right?" Lila's fake father muttered. "I told you that hook wouldn't hold," before realizing what he'd said. Tyler's mother frowned. "Excuse me," panic spread across Lila's face. He means the metaphorical hook, the suspense, we were just—" "The hook in the ceiling," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "He's referring to the chandelier. You installed yesterday for your scene." The room went dead quiet. Every lie unraveled at once. Tyler's mother looked around, confused. "Scene? What is she talking about?" Lila stammered. "Grandma, please." "Joe," I corrected softly. "Isn't that what you call me, dear? Since your real grandmother was apparently traveling?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted them to like me." Tyler's father stood. "Lila, are these people your real parents or not?" The silence that followed could have shattered glass. The fake mother tried to speak, but the fake father grabbed her arm. "We're leaving," he muttered, and the three of them hurried out, leaving Lila frozen in the wreckage of her own illusion. When the door shut behind them, I finally breathed. Tyler's parents excused themselves quickly, murmuring something about needing to process. The sound of their car fading down the road was the loneliest music I'd ever heard. Lila turned to me, mascara streaked, shaking. "You ruined everything." "No, darling," I said quietly. "You did." She stormed to her room, slamming the door so hard the walls trembled. I stood in the middle of my half-destroyed dining room, the smell of wax and broken porcelain in the air, and whispered to the empty space, "Martha would have known how to reach her better than I do." That night, when the silence came, it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy and alive. Because somewhere inside that silence, I could hear the beginning of something bigger, something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. And as I swept the shards of glass into the trash, I made myself a promise. My granddaughter was going to learn that pretending to be someone else is easy, until the truth shows up wearing your last name. I didn't sleep that night. The house still smelled like candle wax and embarrassment. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like Lila's broken apology that never came. I made tea around 2 a.m., though my hands trembled too much to drink it. It had been a long time since I'd felt truly old, but that night I did. Not because of my age, but because of what I'd seen. How a young soul could lose herself to lies so quickly, how easily kindness could turn into performance. By morning, Lila still hadn't come out of her room. I could hear her muffled sobs through the door and the faint sound of her phone buzzing every few minutes. Maybe Tyler, maybe those fake actors trying to get their money. I wanted to knock, to tell her I wasn't angry, just disappointed in a way words couldn't cover. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe fear that she'd just turn her pain into another script. Around 10, I heard the door open. She stepped into the hallway, hair a tangled mess, eyes swollen from crying. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke. "Grandma, they posted about me." "Who did?" Tyler's mom. She wrote some long Facebook post about young people lying for a social status. It's getting shared everywhere. She threw her phone on the table. My entire reputation is ruined. Sweetheart, I said gently, a reputation built on lies isn't a roof worth crying over when it collapses. She glared at me. You don't get it. My life is over. No internship, no job. People will think I'm insane. I wanted to tell her that no one's life ends because of the truth. It only begins there. But she wouldn't hear that now. She needed someone to blame, and I was convenient. You couldn't just stay quiet, she said, tears turning sharp. You couldn't let me have this one night. One night pretending to be someone else? I asked softly. How long were you planning to live in that costume, Lila? Her face twisted, and for a second, I saw the frightened child behind the arrogance. I just wanted to belong, she whispered. You don't understand what it's like being surrounded by people who have everything. Money, connections, perfect families. They don't see me. I'm just the scholarship girl with the dead mom and a grandma in a tiny house. I swallowed hard. You think that makes you less? She didn't answer. Then maybe you've been looking at the wrong kind of people. She turned away. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to fight to be respected. That one hurt. Because once upon a time, I had fought. Harder than she could imagine. I didn't argue. Instead, I opened the drawer under the counter and took out a photo album. The one she'd tried to hide before the dinner. The one with the worn brown cover that smelled faintly of lemon polish and thyme. I set it in front of her. What's this? Your inheritance, I said, and not the kind you can spend. She sighed dramatically but opened it. The first photo was of me at 23, standing in front of a typewriter, my hair tied back, my smile uncertain. The second was of a man shaking my hand, a man in a Navy uniform. Who's that? She asked. That, I said, is Senator Howard Raines. I was his secretary during his first campaign. Lila blinked. You worked in politics? I worked in survival. After your grandfather came back from Vietnam, we had nothing. I typed speeches by day, cleaned offices by night. I sat in rooms where people pretended to care about the poor while sipping champagne they couldn't pronounce. I know what it's like to watch people fake their way through decency. She looked at the photos, silent now. Do you know what I learned from those years? I continued. That the loudest liars always want to be admired. The honest ones just want to be understood. She flipped another page. Photos of our little house when it was new, me pregnant with her mother, my husband building the porch. You built this? Every nail, every crack in the paint has our fingerprints in it. Something softened in her eyes, but pride kept her from admitting it. Later that afternoon, she left without a word, just packed a small bag and slammed the front door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I told myself to let her go, but 3 days later, the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Josephine Hartman? Yes, this is she. This is Officer Grayson from the town police. Are you related to a Miss Lila Hartman? My knees went weak. What happened? She's fine, ma'am. Just a minor incident. She's at the station. By the time I got there, the sight of her nearly stopped my heart. Lila was sitting on a bench, makeup smudged, a blanket around her shoulders. She looked like a ghost of herself. What did you do, honey? I whispered when I reached her. She bit her lip. They arrested me for trespassing. I tried to talk to Tyler. At his house? She nodded, eyes glassy. He wouldn't answer my messages. I just wanted to explain. The officer handed me a clipboard. We're not pressing charges since it's a misunderstanding, but she needs someone to take her home. Home. The word felt heavier than usual. That night, she sat at the kitchen table in silence while I reheated soup. She finally said, Grandma, I think I've ruined my life. No, I said. You've just found out what it's worth. She looked up, confused. Reputation fades, but character? That's what stays when the spotlight burns out. Her chin trembled. I don't even know who I am anymore. Then it's time to find out. She wiped her eyes, trying to hold herself together. How? I smiled faintly. We start small, by telling the truth. Lila sniffled. To who? To yourself first. We sat there for a long time, the clock ticking between us. For the first time in years, she let me hold her hand, but even as she promised to do better, I saw a shadow of worry in her face. Something else was bothering her, something she hadn't said, and I would soon find out that her lies weren't entirely her own. Because the next morning, when I went to get the mail, an envelope slid through the slot. Thick, official-looking, addressed to Ms. Lila Hartman, C.O. Josephine Hartman. The return address read, Wellington Casting Agency. I stared at it, my stomach turning. Whatever Lila had done that night of the dinner, whoever she had paid to play her family, wasn't over, and I had a feeling the real show was just beginning. When I opened that envelope, I half expected it to be some meaningless receipt, but what I found made my heart stumble. Inside was a printed invoice for $2,400, signed and stamped by Wellington Casting Agency, Chicago branch. Thank you for choosing our family package, it read. 3 actors, 4-hour dinner service, including light improvisation and character preparation. Character preparation? I sat down at the kitchen table, the paper trembling between my fingers. My granddaughter had actually bought a family. I heard the shower running upstairs. Lila getting ready for another day of pretending she wasn't falling apart. I waited until she came down, hair wet, face pale but proud. Morning, she muttered, reaching for the fridge. Morning, I said softly, sliding the envelope across the table. Mail for you. Her hand froze before it touched the handle. What's that? You tell me. She glanced at the paper. The color drained from her face. Where did you get that? It came through the mail slot, her voice cracked. You opened my mail? Yes, because it was addressed to my house, and because the truth already lives here, whether you like it or not. She sank into the chair, shoulders trembling. Grandma, I can explain. I'm listening. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she said, words tumbling out fast. I just wanted to impress Tyler's family. They're from Boston, old money. I found this agency online. They said they could make it look real. Just a dinner. I was going to tell Tyler after, but... Her voice broke. He told me I finally seemed like someone who belonged in his world. He said he was proud of me, and I couldn't lose that. So I doubled down. I thought if they just saw me as enough, then maybe they'd love me for real. I looked at her. This girl who used to wear her mother's old sweaters like armor, who once believed kindness was currency enough. Now she was sitting there, all makeup and fear, begging to be believed. Oh, Lila, I whispered. Love that depends on lies isn't love. It's a loan you'll never finish paying. She cried quietly. I didn't reach out. Not yet. She needed to sit with it first, to feel the weight of what she'd built. Then something occurred to me. How did you even afford this? Her eyes flicked to the side. I used my tuition refund check. I felt the air go out of my chest. Lila, no. It was only 1 semester. I thought I could make it back through brand work, online stuff. Brand work? She wiped her nose. There's this influencer who helps students rebrand themselves. He said I could model for luxury lifestyle posts, make money, rebuild my reputation. He's been messaging me all week about a new partnership. Says it's exclusive. A chill crawled up my spine. What's his name? She hesitated. Dorian. Last name? I don't know, but he's legit. He has like 50,000 followers. There it was again. The trap of modern illusions. I didn't know much about social media, but I knew a salesman when I heard one. And Dorian sounded like trouble wearing a perfect smile. That afternoon, while Lila pretended to study in her room, I opened my old laptop. It groaned like an old dog waking up from a nap, but it worked. I typed Dorian Luxury Rebrand into the search bar. What I found wasn't a fashion consultant. It was a recruiter for a social scam operation that had been flagged by consumer watch groups, the Aurelius Network. They promised luxury partnerships, quick fame, and instant image restoration. But reviews told another story. Hidden fees, identity theft, lawsuits, and one comment caught my eye. He targets people after public humiliation stories, offers to rebuild their reputation. Don't fall for it. Public humiliation. Lila fit the description perfectly. I printed everything I found, slipped it into a folder, and set it on the counter. When she came downstairs, phone in hand, her eyes were lit with nervous excitement. He wants to meet me in person, Grandma, tomorrow. He says he can get me brand deals that'll fix everything. Where? Downtown, some studio. Absolutely not, she groaned. You don't understand. This could change my life. I understand more than you think. I opened the folder, showing her the printed pages. That's who you're about to meet. Her expression changed as she read the first headline, Luxury Scam Targeting College Students. Meet Dorian. Her lips parted. No, that's not... It is. She looked up at me, trembling. How did you find this? I may be old, sweetheart, but I know what desperation looks like. I wore it once myself. Her face crumpled. I just wanted to start over. You will, but not by pretending to be someone else. You start over by being brave enough to be you again. She nodded, tears running freely now. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd listen, that maybe the storm had finally passed, but at 3 a.m, I heard the creak of the front door. I got up quietly, looked through the window, and saw Lila walking down the driveway, phone glowing in her hand. A car waited at the curb. She climbed in, and my heart sank. By the time I found the courage to move, the car was gone, swallowed by the night. I stood there barefoot on the porch, cold air biting my skin, one thought burning through me. My granddaughter was walking straight into another lie, and this time the world she was stepping into wouldn't just break her heart, it could destroy her. I didn't sleep a second that night. I sat in my armchair by the window, the one with the tear in the armrest that Lila always said looked too old-fashioned, staring at the driveway like it might give me answers. The clock ticked louder than usual, each second another reminder that I had failed to protect her. By sunrise, I'd called her phone at least 20 times. No answer. The last message I'd sent glared up from the screen like a ghost. Lila, please, come home. We can fix this together. The silence that followed was worse than anger. At 7:30, the phone finally rang. Unknown number. My heart leapt, then dropped when I heard the voice on the other end. Mrs. Hartman? This is Officer Kim, from the city precinct. My knees buckled. Is she... She's safe, the officer interrupted quickly, but she's shaken up. We'd appreciate if you could come down here. When I arrived, the station smelled like burnt coffee and stale air conditioning. Lila sat at a metal table clutching her phone, mascara streaked like bruises down her cheeks. She looked smaller somehow, like the lies had melted off and left her bare. Grandma, she whispered. I pulled her into my arms. Oh, honey, what happened? The officer cleared his throat. Your granddaughter was involved in what appears to be a fraudulent casting scheme. The man calling himself Dorian, real name Darren Cole, was arrested this morning for multiple counts of identity theft and coercion. Miss Hartman was one of the victims. Lila's voice was tiny. I didn't know. He said he worked with influencers. He said he could fix everything. Did he take anything from you? I asked. She nodded, wiping her eyes. My student ID, my passport, my phone passwords. He said they were for verification. The officer sighed. We caught him just in time. Someone reported suspicious activity at the location, an empty warehouse downtown. When we got there, he was trying to load equipment into a van. Miss Hartman was waiting inside for her photo session. I felt the air drain from my lungs. Who reported it? The officer flipped through his notes. An anonymous call. Woman's voice said she had reason to believe a college student was walking into a scam. I froze. Anonymous, he said again. Did you make that call, ma'am? I shook my head slowly. No, but I know who did. Because that voice, the one that had saved my granddaughter, could only have belonged to someone who'd known her name, someone who'd been close enough to the danger to see it coming. And I remembered in that moment the invoice from Wellington Casting Agency, the agency that had provided Lila's fake family. Someone there must have realized what she was doing and tried to stop her from falling further. Lila was released later that morning, trembling but safe. We rode home in silence. She stared out the window like the city had turned to glass. When we pulled into the driveway, she whispered, "Grandma, I think I hate myself." "Don't," I said. "You made a mistake. You got lost. We all do. But you came home." She didn't answer, just walked inside and disappeared into her room. I made tea, not for her, but to calm my own shaking hands. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my late husband's old desk drawer. Inside were his notebooks, his stamps, and one small black address book. He used to call it his map of good people. Inside were names of friends, contacts, people who had helped us over the years. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. Marion Walters, Wellington Casting Agency. I called. A woman's voice answered on the second ring. "Wellington Casting, Marion speaking." "Marion," I said. "This is Josephine Hartman. We spoke once, years ago, about a charity play. I think you know my granddaughter, Lila." A pause, then quietly. "Oh, Mrs. Hartman. Yes. I remember her. Did you call the police?" Another pause. "I did. I saw the news about that Dorian fellow online, recognized Lila in a photo he'd posted. She looked terrified. I couldn't stand by." My throat tightened. "You saved her." "She didn't deserve what he was planning," Marion said softly. "She's a good girl, just confused. I've seen it before. So many young people chasing stories they can't live up to." I thanked her through tears. When I hung up, Lila was standing in the doorway. She'd heard the whole thing. Her face crumpled, and for the first time in years, she didn't hide behind pride. "Grandma, I don't deserve you." I stood and cupped her cheek. "Maybe not yet, but you will." That night, she sat with me on the porch. We watched the sky fade from pink to deep blue. She leaned her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was little. "I don't know how to face everyone at school," she murmured. "They'll never let me forget this." "Then don't go back to them," I said gently. "Go somewhere new. Start clean. This time, tell the truth about who you are before anyone else tries to rewrite it." She smiled faintly through tears. "You really think I can?" I looked at her, the bruised hope flickering in her eyes. "You're my granddaughter. Of course you can." For a few days, peace settled in the house again. She cooked dinner with me, helped clean, even laughed once or twice. I began to believe the worst was behind us. Until the letter arrived. It was thick, cream-colored, expensive paper. The kind used by lawyers. The return address made my stomach twist. Whitfield and Marsh, attorneys at law. I opened it slowly. Inside, a formal notice. "Dear Ms. Hartman, this letter is to inform you that our client, Mr. Tyler Bennett, intends to file a civil defamation suit against you for damages sustained as a result of false representation and fraud. You are required to respond within 14 days. At the bottom, a line that turned my blood cold. "Failure to comply may result in public litigation." Lila came down the stairs, yawning, holding a cup of coffee. "What's that?" I handed it to her. She read the first line, and the cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "He's suing me?" she whispered. "For what?" "For pretending to be someone you weren't," I said quietly. "For lying to his family." Tears welled in her eyes. "Grandma, I can't go to court. I don't even have money for a lawyer." I placed a hand over hers. "Then we'll find a way. But you're not facing this alone." She looked at me like a drowning child seeing land for the first time. And I meant it, because if the world wanted to drag my granddaughter down for trying to be something she wasn't, then they were going to have to go through me first. And I hadn't fought my way through 72 years of storms to lose a battle like this. When you reach my age, you learn that people's true faces only appear when money and shame walk into the same room. Lila's perfect boyfriend and his glossy family were no different. They didn't want justice. They wanted humiliation, a public punishment that would keep their family name polished and her memory buried under gossip. The morning after the letter arrived, I found Lila sitting at the kitchen table, the notice spread out in front of her like a death sentence. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were red and hollow. "Grandma," she whispered, "they're saying I ruined their reputation, that I lied about who I was. But Tyler told me to exaggerate. He said everyone does it." "Did you sign anything for him?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "He had me sign a non-disclosure agreement, but it wasn't about the dinner. He said it was for image protection. I didn't even read it." My stomach turned cold. "Do you still have a copy?" She nodded weakly and handed it to me from her folder. I read the small print. My heart clenched. The document wasn't an NDA. It was a liability waiver, drafted to protect him from any association with fraudulent public presentation. "Lila," I said softly, "this wasn't protection. It was a trap." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought he loved me." "Oh, sweetheart," I murmured. "Men like him love mirrors, not people." That afternoon, I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 15 years. Daniel Cook, my late husband's cousin, a retired attorney who'd once defended small business owners pro bono. He owed me a favor. "Joe," he said when he picked up, his voice rough with age and nicotine, "haven't heard from you since Marty's funeral." "I need your help, Danny." He sighed. "You always did when there was fire in your eyes. What happened?" I told him everything, the fake dinner, the scam, the letter. He was silent for a long time before saying, "Bring me the documents and the girl. Let's see what we're really dealing with." The next day, we drove to his office, a tiny space above an old bakery that smelled like sugar and dust. Danny looked older, softer, but his mind was still sharp. He read the letter twice, then the NDA, then leaned back in his chair and whistled. "They think they're smart," he said, "but this is sloppy work. Half these clauses are unenforceable, and the rest depend on her intent. You can't prove intent with illusions. Only with lies that harm someone." "She harmed their pride," I said. "Pride isn't billable, Joe." He smirked. "Trust me, I've seen worse. We'll respond, and we'll do it publicly. Sometimes the best defense is daylight." "Publicly?" Lila whispered, terrified. He nodded. "We'll tell the truth before they tell their version. You didn't scam anyone for money. You made a mistake out of insecurity. Their lawsuit is intimidation, pure and simple. But if you hide, you'll look guilty. If you stand up, they'll shrink." On the drive home, Lila was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, "I don't deserve this kind of help." I looked at her and smiled. Good people don't get help because they deserve it. They get help because someone loves them. That night, she wrote her first honest post. "I lied to people I cared about because I was ashamed of where I came from. But my grandmother taught me that pretending to be perfect isn't the same as being strong. I'm owning what I did, and I'm trying to make it right." We hit post together. The internet did what the internet always does. Half of it threw stones, the other half offered forgiveness. But something remarkable happened. Among the messages was one from an unfamiliar name. "Hi, Lila. I read your story. I used to work for the Bennett family. There's something you should know." She looked at me, wide-eyed. "Should I open it?" I nodded. The message continued. "Tyler's parents aren't who they say they are. They've built their own fake foundation to dodge taxes. I have documents proving it. If they sue you, I'll testify." For a moment, the room felt perfectly still. I could hear the clock ticking and the distant hum of the fridge. Lila whispered, "What if it's a trap?" "Then we'll be careful," I said. "But if it's true, they've made a mistake picking a fight with someone who finally stopped lying." 2 days later, Danny filed a countersuit for defamation and emotional distress. The Bennett's lawyers went quiet for exactly 48 hours before replying with an offer to settle privately. Danny called me that night. "They're scared, Joe," he said, sounding almost giddy. "That ex-employee your granddaughter talked to, turns out she's legit. She sent over tax records, fake donation receipts, the works. I forwarded them to the state auditor." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "we watch them squirm." Lila sat beside me as I hung up. "Grandma, did we just win?" "Not yet," I said. "Winning isn't when they lose. It's when you can look in the mirror again without flinching." The next morning, a black SUV stopped in front of the house. My heart leapt until I saw who stepped out. Not police, not lawyers, but a woman in her 50s with neat blonde hair and a folder under her arm. "Mrs. Hartman?" she asked politely. "I'm with Channel 9 News. We'd love to interview your granddaughter about her story. The cost of pretending, that's what we're calling the segment." I looked at Lila. Her eyes filled with fear, then something steadier. "Should I?" "Only if you tell the truth," I said. She nodded. "Then yes." The interview aired 3 nights later. She spoke softly, honestly. No makeup filters, no rehearsed lines. She told the world about the pressure to fit in, about how one small lie snowballed into disaster, about how she learned that love isn't earned through pretending. By the end, the host was teary-eyed. The clip went viral. Messages poured in, from students, teachers, even parents. People weren't mocking her anymore. They were thanking her. "You turned your mistake into something good," I told her one evening as we watched the sunset through the porch window. She smiled faintly. "You think Mom would be proud?" I squeezed her hand. "She'd be proud that you stopped running from her shadow." We sat in silence for a while. Then, almost shyly, Lila said, "Grandma, you know that scholarship you and Grandpa set up years ago? The one for girls from our neighborhood?" "Of course. I want to add something to it. A new name. The Hartman Truth Grant. For anyone who's ever felt like they had to hide who they are to be accepted." My chest tightened with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Maybe this was what redemption looked like. Not fireworks or applause, but quiet courage in the aftermath. But I should have known life never ends with a neat bow. Because a week later, as we were cleaning up after dinner, I found another letter in the mailbox. This one didn't come from lawyers or TV producers. It was handwritten with no return address. The ink was smudged, the paper creased. Inside was a single line. "Your granddaughter isn't the only one who bought a family." My hands trembled as I turned the page, and at the bottom, tucked inside the envelope, was an old photograph. One that made my blood run cold. It was me, at 25. Standing beside a man who wasn't my husband, holding a baby. I must have sat there for 5 minutes just staring at that photo. My younger self, frozen in another lifetime, smiling a smile I barely recognized. The baby in my arms looked about a year old, wrapped in a thin white blanket, one tiny hand clutching my dress. Behind us, a sign, Eden's Hope Orphanage, 1963. My pulse quickened. That year, I was 25, still working long shifts as a typist at the senator's office, still struggling to pay rent after your grandfather was sent overseas. I'd gone to that orphanage once, to help deliver supplies for a charity drive. I remember holding a baby while the nuns took photos for the donors. I never even knew the picture existed, but someone did. Someone had been digging. "Grandma?" Lila's voice broke through the static in my head. She was drying dishes, humming quietly. The same tune her mother used to hum when she was nervous. "What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her the envelope. "Maybe I have." She studied the photo, brow furrowing. That's you. You were beautiful. Who's the baby? I wish I knew. I sank into the chair, the edges of memory cutting sharp. That was taken at an orphanage decades ago. I volunteered there a few times, but... I tapped the note. Who would send this? And why now? Lila sat down across from me. Do you think it's connected to Tyler or those people you worked for? Could be anyone, I murmured, but the timing feels... pointed. She hesitated, then said softly, Grandma, there's something else you should know. After the interview went viral, people started messaging me. Reporters, old acquaintances, even strangers. One of them said you were a public figure once. I sighed. That's generous. I was a footnote in other people's stories. But one of the messages, she continued, wasn't about me. It was about you. They said someone named Howard wanted to find you. I froze. Howard Raines. She nodded. Do you know him? My stomach twisted. He was the senator I worked for in my 20s. The message said he's in hospice now, Lila whispered. He's asking for you. I hadn't heard that name in 40 years. I thought of that office, the gray carpet that smelled like coffee and ambition, the speeches I typed that made promises no one kept. Howard had been charming, clever, and married. There had been whispers back then, rumors that I'd been too close to him. All lies, I'd told myself. But now, looking at that photograph, doubt crept in like a chill draft. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that baby, the round cheeks, the tuft of dark hair, the way I'd held it close without even realizing how natural it felt. By morning, I'd made up my mind. We're going to the hospice, I told Lila. Are you sure? She asked. No, I admitted. But truth doesn't wait for courage. The hospice was quiet, filled with the soft beeping of machines and the faint scent of lavender soap. We found his room easily. The once golden senator was now a frail shadow, his sharp jawline softened by age. His eyes fluttered open when he heard my name. Joe. His voice was a whisper. I wondered if you'd come. I took his hand, cold, fragile. Who sent that photo, Howard? He coughed, his chest rattling. I did. Had my nurse mail it. I needed to tell you before I go. Lila stood behind me, her hands clasped tightly. Howard's gaze drifted to her. She looks like you. Back then. I felt my heart pound. What are you saying? He smiled faintly. Do you remember the child? At Eden's Hope? I nodded slowly. She wasn't part of the orphanage, he said, his voice trembling. She was mine. The world tilted. Yours? He nodded, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. Her mother was a staffer, married. When she died in childbirth, I couldn't claim the child publicly. The scandal would have ruined everything. You were the only one I trusted. You took her photo that day. My throat felt dry. You mean the baby was... your daughter, he whispered. The room spun. Lila gasped behind me. Howard squeezed my hand weakly. I arranged for her adoption, but I kept the photograph. I told myself I'd tell you one day. I didn't. I'm sorry. He coughed again, and the nurse hurried in. He needs to rest, she said softly. We stepped outside. My knees almost gave way. Lila guided me to a chair in the hallway. Grandma, she whispered. If that's true, that means Mom wasn't... I stared at the linoleum floor. It means I never knew who she truly was, that she was given to another family and somehow, through some impossible twist of fate, found her way back to me anyway. Lila sat beside me, silent tears streaking her face. You didn't buy a family, Grandma. You built one out of everything life tried to take from you. I laughed softly through the tears. And you tried to buy one when you already had the best one in the world. She leaned into me, her head on my shoulder. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't enough. I kissed her hair. We both got lost in other people's worlds, but the truth always has a way of finding home. A week later, Howard passed away. The hospice called to say he'd left a letter for me. Inside was a small envelope and a note written in shaky handwriting. "For Joe, I hope this gives you peace. H." Inside the envelope was a faded birth certificate. The name Rebecca Ann typed neatly beside the word mother, Josephine Hartman. My hands trembled as I held it. For all the years I'd spent doubting myself, hiding from my past, pretending I wasn't broken, here was proof that I'd been more than I ever knew. That love had lived quietly inside my life long before I understood it. That night, Lila and I sat on the porch again. The air smelled of rain and jasmine. She looked up at the stars and said softly, "So, our family started with a lie, but it found its truth." I smiled, my heart both heavy and light. Maybe that's what all families do. The trick is staying honest once you find each other. She reached for my hand. "You think people can really change?" I looked at her, this girl who had fallen and risen and learned how to be real again. And I said, "Yes, especially when they stop pretending." The night was quiet after that, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore, just peace. Earned and fragile, like glass finally set down without shattering. And as the moon rose over our little house, the same house she once thought wasn't good enough, I realized something simple and profound. You can rent a chandelier, you can hire a fake family, you can paint over the walls of your past, but the truth always glows through the cracks. And if you're lucky, it looks a lot like forgiveness.